So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. I am honoured to welcome our very first guest of the day, the wonderful Sir John Timpson. Timpsons is a brand we all know and love. In fact, I doubt there's anyone in the audience who hasn't had their shoes resold or their keys cut at a local Timpsons. Now, with over 2,000 stores, John and his son James have been on quite a journey and know a thing or two about extraordinary leadership. Sir John Timpson, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much. Let's just go back to Tuesday, the 24th of March this year, which was memorable, not because it was my 77th birthday, which it was, but because it was the very first day that all 2,100 of our shops were shut. We started in 1865, so we've been going for 155 years, and we'd never, ever closed the shops. We've been through 2 world wars, and run by my great-grandfather and grandfather and my father, and this was the very first time our shop's been closed. And we're facing now a completely new set of problems. The first thing that happened, as far as I was concerned, that my son James put me under house arrest and told me I shouldn't get anywhere near the business, but we had lots of phone calls. I wasn't allowed to go to the office, and I've been pretty well locked up ever since. But I've been following what he's been doing, and obviously giving him advice when asked for. But also I've been reflecting on what's been an amazing 25 years in our business. Over the last 25 years, we've moved from a turnover of 20 million to 300 million, and our profits have moved from 300,000 to 28 million. So it's been quite a journey. We hadn't quite expected to find this rocky path that we've got at the moment. But to make that change, we've really had a lot of light bulb moments and lots of luck. It hasn't been done by planning. We don't do lots of formal plans or budgeting. In fact, we tend to ignore the best practice that everyone else follows. We don't have a marketing department, we don't advertise, we don't have a PR department. We seldom use consultants other than some 1 or 2 practical little things. We don't have appraisals. Basically, James and I, over the last 25 years, that he's been involved for pretty well all of that, we just sort of wing it. We do it our way, and we do it in a way that we now call upside down management. And that all started by one of those light bulb moments. And it was when we discovered, I suddenly realized what the secret was behind amazing customer service. Because up till then, I spent a lot of time on, I started as a shop assistant on the selling shoes. And so I was keen on to give, I wrote our code of service, telling everyone how to do it. We had lots of training courses. We had notices in the back stock room telling people the next person you meet is the most important person in your life, and smile, you're on stage, all that sort of thing. None of these really are the secret. The secret is so obvious and it's so simple, but I'm embarrassed that it took me so long to discover it. The simple secret behind great customer service is that you must rely on the people who serve the customers to do it the way they want. Give them the freedom to look after each individual customer in their own personal way. It's a secret I should have discovered a few years before when I read a book about Nordstrom, the department store chain in the States that was famous for legendary service, with sales clerks going the extra mile and literally going around to people's houses late on a Friday to deliver things they needed for the weekend, that sort of thing, because they had the freedom to do it. And in the middle of that book about Nordstrom was a management chart which was upside down, making the point that the people who make the money, the people who really run the business, are the people who serve the customers. Everyone else is purely there to support the people who make the money. So right down to the chief executive, their job is to help that person who serves the customers. And this completely bowled me over. I thought, this is going to be something that will change our business. And I was so enthusiastic. I spent 3 months doing very little than go around the shops, telling them of my idea and telling them that we'd scrapped all, we had a standing orders for shoe repair factories for pages long, telling everyone exactly how they should run that, do everything in their life. And I scrapped all that. And I just said, from now on, we're going to have 2 rules, only 2 rules. Rule 1 is look the part. Wear the uniform, turn up on time, make sure the shop's tidy. And rule number 2 is just simply put the money in the till. And so I was going around telling everyone this was the message. They've now got the freedom to really look after those customers and do all the extra things that they thought were going to improve their business. But nothing really happened. And I should have realized at the time that while I was going around visiting the shops, there were the area managers running after me, telling the shops to completely ignore what John says, and you work for me, and you actually do what the area manager says. So that was the first challenge. I suddenly realized that the big block to get my upside down management going was middle management. And I could understand their problem. They were saying, how can I be responsible for the profit of my area if I can't tell people what to do? And they also said, if I'm going to give freedom to everybody, what's going to be left for me to do? What is the job? So we had to spend about 5 years reinventing what a boss does. And from now, for the last 20 years, they understand that being a boss in our business is about looking after your people, the members of your team. Being a good boss is making sure that every member of the team becomes the very best that they can be. And you do that by giving them the support, giving them the training, and making sure you clear the obstacles that get in the way. But we also found there was another bit of problem called head office. And it's a strange thing, but most businesses find that people think they get promoted to head office. And people, when they get to head office, think they know more than everyone else in the business, which is completely untrue, because the individual out there doing the job actually knows more about that job than anyone else knows. And it's silly for the person sat at the head office to think they can tell them what to do. But that's precisely what happens in almost every business you can think of, even today. And we got to understand the difference between strategy and policy. Strategy is what the central team should do, deciding the route forward, deciding what the investment is, deciding exactly what business you're in, just giving the overall picture, and then you let all the colleagues out there, the practical people who know what to do, let them get on with it. The mistake that a lot of head offices were doing was to come up with a lot of policies. And policies got turned into process. And a process is a very simple way of telling the people at the front line what to do. And it gets even worse that head office people, being like they are, they like to check up that their process is working the way it should be. So those poor people who have now been confined, having to do it not their way, but head office's way, then have to spend more time filling in reports to show whether they're actually doing what they've been told to do. So we had to scrap that. We had to get rid of the policy, get rid of the process, and make sure that head office understood they're purely there to provide the support for the people in the field. Because no one in head office is as expert as the people who know what they're doing day to day. The day-to-day operators know best. But then the biggest discovery of all came when we realized that this upside-down management approach actually only works with the right people. If you haven't got the right, you've got to have great people to have a great business, and it's got to be full of the right personalities. And our problem was when we set out on this journey that we were hiring shoe repairers and key cutters, which you might think was a pretty sensible thing to do. But in actual fact, we didn't really want shoe repairers and key cutters. We wanted people with personality. Because if you've got someone who's got a really good personality to look after customers, you can teach them to repair shoes and cut keys. But if you hire a really grumpy cobbler, however skillful they might be, you're not going to change their personality, and you'll not be able to look after customers. So we had to change the way we recruited. And the big breakthrough on that was my little Mr. Men interview form, which is just a whole series of cartoons. There's Mrs. Happy, Mr. Friendly, Mr. Keen, Mrs. Punctual. And then there's the other lot. There's Mr. Grumpy, Mr. Dull, Mr. Late, and Mr. Very, very Scruffy. And underneath, and it's just a simple form with all those pictures on. And underneath each picture is an empty box. All we'd ask the interviewers to do is to tick those boxes that most fit the person in front of them. We're not interested in what people put on their application form. We're not bothered about their CV, what qualifications they've got. And we don't want them to talk about what they've done in all their previous roles. We just want them to talk about themselves. There's no set questions, just get them talking about something they like talking about so they can reveal their personality. That's all we do. There's no psychometric testing, none of all that stuff. And if someone ticks the right boxes, the number of the right boxes, then we just ask them to work in one of our shops for half a day alongside someone who gets it. And that basically tells us all we need to know. And I think that actual move of changing the way we recruit for personality is just about the single biggest thing we've done that's made an enormous difference. It doesn't always happen. We don't always get it right. But the number of times, most people, when they talk to me about our shops, they will actually they will immediately mention the person who spoke to them. They're talking about the personalities. And it's true. We've got some amazing people out there because they're free to be themselves. They use that personality to look after the customers. But another thing we learned, if you're going to be full of great people, you don't just get there by hiring people for their personality, using my Mr. Men form. You've actually got to do something about the people you've got in the business who simply aren't good enough. And I put it this way, it's totally unfair, unreasonable, and it's almost immoral to expect really good people to spend their working lives alongside somebody who doesn't love the business as much as they do. It's soul destroying to know you're going to turn up every day and be alongside someone. Actually, you might not turn up, but do a sickie, but if they do turn up, they're forever complaining about the boss, complaining about the conditions, and nothing's right for them. And I don't think the right way to tackle that is the standard HR way of a lot of warning letters and all that sort of stuff, and certainly performance management programs, which are generally a total lie, which all you're trying to do is to make sure you've got a clean bill of health if you go to an employment tribunal. The right, honest and proper way to do it is to have a conversation, which we call a partners friends conversation. Which is based on the fact you start with, basically, we probably got it wrong. I think you've made a mistake coming to us, because it seems pretty clear to me that you aren't happy. And people who are not good, who don't perform well in the job, it mainly is because they don't enjoy it. And if they're not happy, we ought to do something about it. So what we do, as nicely, as quickly, and as generously as possible, to help them, work together with them, so they can find their happiness in a job elsewhere. And that makes an enormous difference to the business. You cannot have a really great company without lots of great people. And that means you've got to say goodbye to those that aren't particularly good. And most big businesses are really bad at this, which is why a lot of good people leave, especially if they've got a lot of that process going on. And the good people are desperately keen to overcome the process and do the good thing for the company. But they're frustrated by that and frustrated by the other colleagues they've got around them. So they go, and you're left with a higher and higher proportion of people who just, in my terms, don't rate 9 or 10 out of 10. But once you've got lots of really great colleagues, and you've been supporting them, you've been training them, your job as a boss is to look after them with lots of praise, lots of nice things. And I think this has become a very important part of what we've done over the last 25 years. Probably the big breakthrough was when we gave everyone their birthday off. which was a simple thing, which we did in 2003. I invented a centenary. We didn't. I put a little thing up on the faces of all our shops to say we were established in 1903, which was a complete lie, really. I didn't know. But I thought a centenary in 2003 would be a great idea. And part of the celebration of the centenary was to give everyone their birthday off, a free extra paid day for their birthday. And that was so popular, we've done it ever since for everybody. And since then, we've now got 19 holiday homes that our colleagues stay out for free. All in the UK, because we found that worked well. Very much family venues, so they can go, and it's generally one of those sort of haven holiday parks, that sort of thing. And then about 7 years ago, we invented another thing we call Dreams Come True, which has been really amazing. That we promised at the beginning that one person every month would have their dream made true. And these are life-changing experiences, trips to the other side of the world to see a relative they'd never seen before, or someone they'd never thought they'd ever see again. We've had lots of trips off to Vegas and obviously Disney, and we've done various jobs to help people with dental problems. We've done IVF treatment. We've even actually paid for 2 divorces, which, if you work it out, we've made 8 people very happy through that process. But it's just, there's no process to it. They all get approved by James. If you're not someone who's rates in our language 9 or 10 out of 10, you're not going to get a dream come true. But and we are totally comfortable with the fact that you can't do it for everybody. And I think this is one of the problems of reward programs with a lot of the big businesses. They're too static, because they think it has to be a system that works for everybody. It can't be like that. But with the upside down management, the way we work it, it's not just the people on the shop floor have got the freedom to do the job the way they want. Everyone in the business is free to do their job the way they want. So a boss, an area manager can run his area the way he wants. The person who's got a development job, the person who's run whatever the department is, they do it their way on one condition, that they give the same freedom to every members of their team. So it means that our bosses are free to reward people the way they think is right. We don't have too much of a budget for that. We'd much rather they do the right thing. And we get lots of innovative ways of giving them a week off, paying for meals out, say, I'll come and run the shop for you tomorrow and you can go to the football match. It's whatever they think is going to be right to say thank you and well done. That's okay by me. The other thing that takes up over half of an area's job is actually nothing to do with the business, because their job is to clear the obstacles out of the way, and the biggest obstacle gets in the way is what happens back at home. And often if you've got a real star performer who goes off the boil, it will be almost certainly due to something that's happening in the rest of their lives, whether it's debt or it's stress, an addiction problem, something that's happening in the family. Certainly all these things, and at the moment there's going to be plenty of those sort of problems hanging around. And it's our boss's job, and particularly out in the field, our area manager's job, to be the mentor, to be the listener, because the most helpful thing you can do in those circumstances is to let the person talk, because that's the first step to overcome stress, overcome any problem, is to talk through it with somebody. So we pick the right personalities to be area managers who are going to be sympathetic listeners and be practical in terms of understanding where that person can get help. It's a very, very important part of the way a boss should run the business. And all that together, I mean, it all fits together, the holiday homes and the way we recruit, the Mr. Men, the whole upside down management thing has built up a culture. And everyone feels they're part of the same family, which is why everyone wears a badge which says they've been part of the Timpson family since. And that we put there the date they joined us. And that applies to it because we've got now we've got a whole family of businesses. We've not just got Timpson, we've got Max Spielman, we've got Johnson's, the cleaners, and we've got Snappy Snaps. And they all have the firm, the little saying that says part of the family since. And it works well if we can make sure everyone gets it, which is why one of the first things that happens when people join us, they come to what we call the residential. So it's a night away. We can't do it at the moment under the distancing thing. We'll have to work out how we do it again. It's very powerful. People within their first 3 months, once they've established us as being the right people for us, we go in groups of about 50. They become little teams. They play a game. They play a game for 24 hours. And the game actually is all about our culture. So at the end of the 24 hours, they understand we have a fund to help anyone in debt. That's how we solve that. Why we do that is because it's the way to get the worry off their mind. So the hardship fund helps to solve that. But also it stopped people breaking rule number 2, which, if you remember, was to put the money in the till. So they learn all these things together, and then they become part of a little WhatsApp thing for the group that they're at, and then they become another subsection of our family. And that culture, I think, is particularly powerful. It helps that everybody gets it. I think it makes a really big difference that if you understand it, that if you're trusted to do your job, if you're a manager, most of our shops, we're going to be more so after when we are now starting to open up after all the problems, that we won't be able to have more than one customer in our shops at any one time. So most of them will only have one colleague to serve them. But if they feel it's their shop, if they're trusted to run that shop the way they want, then it's really good for their well-being. They are much happier in the job. They actually are happier at home. And the whole of that sense will also get through to the customer, because the customers almost become part of their family as well. And obviously, that's really good for the business. And we've done 1 or 2 things, which unfortunately in the next couple of years we won't be able to afford to do again for a bit, because it's going to be, everything is going to be really, really keep the expenses as tight as possible while we get through all this. But what we have done, we had one trip, we went off to Malta with 150 people, frontline colleagues, 150 people to celebrate the 150 years since we started the business. Then just before Christmas, we went off to Iceland with 180 of us. We filled a plane and went off to Iceland for the weekend. Again, all frontline colleagues. Did the same with our dry cleaning business who went for a weekend in London. And those trips taught me an awful lot about, everyone got on amazingly well. There was no difference of opinion. There wasn't the slightest issue. They shared rooms with people they'd never met before, and they had a great time because they were all the same sort of personality they got on. And that also tells me something that's really, really important, that everyone in our business is of equal importance. The people in the front, right at the front line, without them, we haven't got a business, which is why it's so important that we run the business with kindness. And the whole focus, going back to my upside down management thing, is that the main purpose of managing the business is to look after the people who look after the customers, and look after them in every sense of the word. So that's not quite it for me. There's just one little bit to mention that I do a little column in the Telegraph every week. Been doing it for 13 years. Goodness knows how I've managed to think about something to talk about for 13 years. But I was asked to do my New Year's resolution. That's right. And I said, and it was literally on New Year's Eve, in the paper that came out then, that my ambition for this year was to actually spread the word about upside down management, and particularly to get that word into other businesses. And I'm a non-executive director at Barclays Bank for the retail arm. And we're starting to make progress. They are starting to talk about upside down management at the board meetings. And I was on a call yesterday, which was actually a communication to all the Barclays people while the lockdown is on, talking about the future. And they're talking about that. I was about to, believe it or not, get involved in helping the NHS to do a bit of upside down management when I was talking about that as recently as January. But what's fascinating to me is that during the last few weeks, a lot of what I've been talking about is starting to happen of necessity. People aren't coming up with processes and policies. They haven't got time to. The urgency of the moment has led to people actually saying, please get on. They're grateful for individuals on the front line to use their initiative. And it's so vital that things get done, that the right way to do it, this upside down management thing of ours, giving people on the front line the freedom to get on and do it, is actually starting to happen. And I just hope that when things get back to normal, whatever normal is going to be, we remember what's happening right now. And it's happening in Barclays Bank. I mean, completely changing the roles, and lots of people who used to be in branches are sat at home and answering questions. And it's transforming the way we do things. But I just hope that the lessons we learn them will help other companies to do a bit of the upside down management, which is up to the last few weeks made our business so successful. So I think that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, John. That was awesome. I don't know if you can see the chat. Lots of people asking for jobs. I want to go and work for John.
Well, one thing I can tell you that we're not interviewing at the moment. We won't be interviewing for, I don't know how many months it's going to take, because sadly, I mean, we've been geared up for the business. We've been geared up for growth. We've been growing like crazy and taking over lots of other businesses. We've gone from 210 shops to 2,100 over those 25 years. And suddenly, we've got an organisation which is geared to growth, and we've got to actually now tighten up a bit. So one of those things is no recruitment, but we'll get back there.
Absolutely. We're going to take a couple of questions if that's all right, John. We're going to put you on the spot. So Jackie has said, very inspiring, John, thank you. You said you spent about 5 years redefining management. What advice would you give to a family business that wants to change their culture and move towards upside down management? Where on earth should they start?
Well, you start, I reckon the first thing that you start by understanding what I've just been talking about. In my lockdown, I'm trying to write a thing for leaders as to how you actually do it, exactly trying to answer that question. You probably start by understanding that understanding what makes your business the money, what are the activities. And during this lockdown thing, now it's really tough. You hang on to all the people who actually make you the money. It's the people who are doing the things that actually don't make that much difference, who are vulnerable. So understand what makes you the money. And then I would define what your 2 rules are. So you actually show what is the freedom I'm willing to give to those people at the front line. And so everyone understands that. And then you've got to, and that's what took the 5 years. I actually wrote what I call my area manager's guide to say exactly what the job of being an area manager was, which was defining the job of being a boss, really. And it was all about people. It wasn't about things that they did. It was all about how they looked after the people who were going to do the job on their behalf. And if you spent a bit of time doing that, I think, and also big important thing to do, say goodbye to the people who are going to get in the way of you doing that. We all waste so much time being messed around by people who get in the way of the business. And we lose a lot of sleep worrying about whether we should have that conversation and say, I'm sorry, it's the time. Don't lose any more sleep, just get on with it.
Fabulous, thank you. Okay, another question from Elle and Linda, a mother-daughter duo. Completely understand what you're saying about the strategy and the policies, but do you still have an operations manual that people can refer to? Is it important to the business?
We have a whole training manual. We train people to do it, but they're called training guides. They're not rules. It's not a standing orders. So we train people how to do the job, but then they've got the freedom to do it the way they want. And by giving people that freedom, of course, you're letting loose, in our case, 5,500 people, to actually come up with new ideas. We started on watch repairs because one of our people in a shop in West Bromwich decided he wanted to repair watches because that's something he did in the past. Another guy, completely off his own bat, came up with the idea of having a lifetime battery for watch repair. We didn't think about that. These ideas are happening all the time because people got the freedom to do it. And they're now putting their ideas on videos. We call it the Timpson tube, and so they're telling everyone else how to make things better. So no, there is not a manual. There's a training manual, which is a guide, but we don't tell people what they've got to do. No orders. The rule is there isn't any, that no one is allowed to tell anyone else what to do.
Incredible. Thank you, John. Another question from Alex. Can you tell us more about the books for children in your stores?
Yeah, well, that's sort of a slight sideline that I got involved in because my late wife Alex and I were foster carers for 31 years, and we learned a lot. I mean, we were bewildered about some of the things, the challenges those children gave us. But we learned in the end, the main reason behind it was the lack of attachment in early years, and what that does to make it difficult to develop the right personality, and that these kids really did not have that safe base that you get for a very solid relationship in the early years. And to understand that, I wrote a book about attachment just about 10 years ago, which I wrote as part of what I was doing with a charity that was helping adopted families. And then more recently, I decided I'd spread the word through schools, so I wrote another book for them. And I've done another one, which is for teenagers who've got that problem. So we decided that we put those books into the shops and give them away, which is what we do. There's another book which I've written, which is Mental Health at Work, which I haven't been giving away, but I will do in future when we get back to the new normal, because I've got another book which is I have written, but they haven't been printed yet, called Teenage Mental Health. So those books are, because that is, we were hearing before the lockdown, this is a big problem. It'll be just probably a lot bigger when everyone gets back. And a lot of people, unfortunately, will not get back to work. And so that's why I'm going to give those books away as well. Just, I mean, it might seem an odd thing to do in a shop. We're not trying to sell books, and we're not about caring for people, but we are in a way. And somehow, customers are as interested in the way we run the business as they are in what we are promoting. So we don't promote keys, we promote the way we run the business.
Fantastic, thank you. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. If we haven't got round to your questions, I will ping them over to John, and maybe he'll have a bit of time when he's having a cup of tea later on to answer some of them, and I'll send them out. So really, some takeaways from this, John, is to think about what are your 2 rules. So at Timpsons, it's look the part and put the money in the till. But for business owners here today, they can go think about their 2 rules, and that's where they need to start. Is that right?
That'll do, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, John. Totally inspiring, incredible. Thank you.